Isn't this weather a bit more like it? I'm Charlie Sykes. Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, the Golden State Warriors notched the best regular season in NBA history with 73 wins, only to be overshadowed by Kobe Bryant, who scored 60 points in the final game of its career. That's the way they read it up in Hollywood, right? Now stop me if you've heard this one before. A Dane County judge rules against the state's right-to-work law. An appeal is pending. And some good jobs news. Wisconsin's unemployment rate is down to 4.5%. The state added 13,100 private sector jobs from February to March. 4,200 of those jobs were in manufacturing. And over the last year, Wisconsin added 47,500 private sector jobs, making it the best year-over-year growth since August 2004. But as usual this year, the headlines continue to be dominated by politics. Hoping to finally tamp down rampant speculation, Speaker Paul Ryan says no, he is not running for president and won't accept the nomination at an open convention.
Count me out. I simply believe that if you want to be the nominee for our party, to be the president, you should actually run for it. I chose not to do this. Therefore, I should not be considered, period, end of story. I just think it would be wrong to go any other way. So let me say again, I am not going to be our party's nominee.
Joining me on our panel this morning, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Mikel Holt, former state representative, political strategist Michelle Litjens, political consultant Lynne DeBruin, and the managing editor of RightWisconsin.com, Collin Roth. Okay, so he's not running, right?
I don't think he's running this time. No. And I think there's a big difference. I know there's some of this is his own making, that he said he didn't want to be Speaker of the House.
Kind of sounds familiar.
But there was a big difference. There were 17 Republicans who ran for president this time. There was nobody that wanted to be Speaker of the House last fall. And I think he's actually preparing to be the head of the Republican Party if this entire election blows up in the Republican Party's face. Somebody is going to have to lead it, and somebody's going to have to put it together.
Was there behind-the-scenes maneuvering, though, possibly? Were there people who were strategizing for how on a 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 58th ballot?
Oh, absolutely. I think there are people in Washington, D.C., there are people all over the country who do not want to see Donald Trump or Ted Cruz as the nominee, but I think that's a fantasy.
Okay. Is he out? Do you take him at his word?
Oh, I absolutely do. His aide remarked that it would be over his dead body if Ryan came out of the convention with the nomination. And bottom line, Ryan's people are very smart, and they're smart enough to know that if he ever wants to run for president, he shouldn't be seen as trying to come to the convention and stealing the nomination from Trump or Cruz or whomever. So it's very clear.
Okay,
right.
So how do you read this? Why did he need to do that?
He needed to do this because people continue to talk about him because so many grassroots Republicans are unhappy with the potential nominees that we have. And so you saw a group, they actually met in Washington, D.C. to talk about getting Ryan to become the nominee out of that convention. And so I think he had to cut everyone off.
Well, obviously some of that speculation was also fed by the fact that he was producing these very, very, very sophisticated videos, the speech he gave about the state of politics, he was doing international trips, and people were thinking, well, what else could he be doing other than running for president, right?
He is the leader. He is the spokesman for the Republican Party right now. He is the highest-ranking Republican. I think he's doing a great job. He is completely different than what Boehner was.
Okay, you buying this?
No. Because I heard it all before. You can say all you want, and I've heard this from a lot of people who ran for local offices. I didn't intend to run, I was drafted. If it gets to those 15, 20 ballots or whatever, who is the most viable candidate? See, before, I think 3 or 4 months ago, we were saying that Rubio was the only one who could beat Hillary. Right now, they said unless they can get Rubio back, and he looks like a failure, so that's not going to happen. So who's the most viable candidate? If the party look like it's about to implode, which it is, then who's the most viable candidate? If they all come begging, Paul Ryan will be the nominee.
I just think the environment is so toxic, and I think the key number to keep in mind is that he is 46 years old. I think that he recognized that even if he were to get this nomination, it would not be necessarily a good thing to come out of an absolutely fractured convention. But again, if you go into an open convention, the reality is nobody has any idea what's going to happen. The only thing that I think would be relatively certain is that if Donald Trump does not get that nomination on the first ballot, if he does not get the 1,237 votes, he will not be the nominee because he won't get the nomination on the second ballot. So either Ted Cruz is going to win on the second or third ballot, or it goes into a absolutely uncharted water. I have a very hard time imagining somebody with as few delegates as John Kasich, and this whole weird talk about Marco Rubio, I just don't see it happening. So what is your glass half full? What is your glass half empty this week? Let's go around the table. Michael Holt, you are first.
Well, my glass is half empty because Urban Day, one of the first schools to participate in the school choice program 25 years ago, is closing its doors. My glass is half full because there are rumors another prominent private school may take over Urban Day. It's a big maybe, but it would be a shame to let a successful school in the central city close its doors.
Michelle Litjens.
Well, my glass is half empty because 66% of millennials think their parents should help them buy their first home. But it's half full because only 15% believe their parents should help them with their monthly mortgage payments.
Lynne DeBruin.
Well, as Air France resumes flights to Iran today, my glass is half full because they'll allow female crew members to opt out of flying there due to attacks on women wearing Western clothes in Iran. But my glass is half empty because Air France won't allow gay crew members to opt out despite Iran's death penalty for homosexuality.
Collin Roth.
My glass is half full because Paul Ryan will remain Speaker of the House and will help chart a path forward for Republicans beyond this election year. It's half empty because I'd be lying if part of me didn't wish Ryan's brand of optimistic, policy-oriented conservatism wasn't going to be on the ballot against Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, well, my glass is half full because Hillary Clinton right now has some of the highest negatives ever recorded for a presidential candidate, a disapproval rating that should make her absolutely unelectable. But my glass is half empty because Donald Trump's numbers are even worse. Our Sunday Insight Countdown shows we are just 2 days away from the New York primary. The Northeast primaries in Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island are 9 days away. The Republican National Convention begins in just 92 days. The Democrat National Convention is 99 days away. And the presidential election, November 8th, is 205 days away. We'll be right back. A big deal for the Bucks and for the taxpayers. The team signed a 30-year lease with Wisconsin Center District Board, a deal that opens the way for the $524 million downtown arena project. Some new wrinkles in the deal. Tough provisions limiting the Bucks' ability to relocate. If the team leaves, it could have to pay back as much as $553 million to the taxpayers. The Bucks will also pay $45 million in lease payments over 30 years, and the team will cover the cost of all cost overruns and will have to set aside at least $60 million for capital repairs and upgrades. The arena is expected to anchor an additional $500 million in private development in the area. So, Lynne DeBruin, good deal?
It is a better deal than it was, but it is still a highly risky deal. These three men are hedge fund owners who made their excuse me, are hedge fund owners who made their millions of dollars by buying low, improving an asset, and then selling quickly before it starts to stabilize or lose profitability. And outside experts, financial experts, et cetera, who've looked at this from Forbes and other places and don't have the emotional desire for the Bucks to stay here, look at this and say the prime business time for these guys to get out of this business is 5 to 10 years into this lease, even with those changes. So we, yes, it's much improved over what it was, and and you and I both oppose the original deal, or we're very skeptical of it. It's better, but even with those financial disincentives in there, these owners could make enough money that it's still would be worth it for them to get out. Okay,
but if they get out, they can't take the team with them because the clawback provisions not only include huge paybacks, always more than the debt, but also they'd have to go through Wisconsin courts. They'd have to get a court's approval. So if they want to sell out, they might be able to do it, but they wouldn't be able to take the team. So what's the downside risk to the taxpayers?
Well, I think a lot of the taxpayers, taxpayer risk is mitigated by this agreement. But the question is, will the Bucks eventually stay here under these owners or stay long term? And that's what I think is risky.
I actually was surprised that the deal was better than I thought, including the fact that they actually got lease payments.
I completely agree with you. I did not think that the taxpayers were going to be this protected in the long run. So you're right. The hedge fund owners may decide, they want to in and out of this, but the taxpayers are definitely protected. We are going to have the Bucks here for a while. We are not responsible for any overruns, and we're not responsible for the maintenance.
Mikel Holt.
Well, as you know, I was on the old stadium board.
Yeah. We're still paying the tax for that.
Yeah, but it's sunset, and then you could probably use that for something else. That would be my suggestion.
Or we could keep the money.
No, you don't even keep it.
Return it to the taxpayer?
You don't even miss it anymore. One thing I've learned is never say never. And do you really honestly think if they saw profits dipping, hedge fund folks, and they wanted to get out, that they're going to pay $500 million back to the state of Wisconsin?
They'll threaten, and there'll be a whole new negotiation.
Okay, I actually don't think that's going to happen. And I think one of the things, and again, part of what surprised me about this deal, one of the unanswered questions, there had been several, was, okay, since the Bucks are responsible for the maintenance, what do we guarantee that they will invest money to maintain this facility? They have specific standards written into this lease deal. They need to maintain this facility in the top half of all NBA facilities. There are minimum requirements. They have to set aside that $60 million. And also, the lease payments address a problem that really had not been addressed by either the governor or the legislature, which was the ongoing financial viability of the Wisconsin Center District itself. That $45 million is important. I'm actually not totally sure what their leverage was that they were able to get this. My only guess would be that simply in the matter of time that the Bucks wanted to get a deal, wanted to get this lease so that they could go ahead. But again, I've been a skeptic, but I think this was a better deal than came out of the legislature.
Much better, and I think if from a taxpayer perspective, you do see a lot more protections, and I agree with you. The cost overrun provisions, the lease payments, and the maintenance proposal. But I think one thing to remain skeptical about is just that it will be some renaissance boom to the city. I think it'll have an impact, but it's probably oversold at this point.
You may not want to hear it, but we will tell you anyway. Let's hand out some unsolicited advice. Mikel Holt, you're first. Well,
mine is to the Milwaukee Police Department. Take heed, Chief, of the report on how racism has undermined the Chicago PD and is linked to citizen distrust, racial profiling, police misconduct, including murder and torture.
Michelle Litjens.
So if you've never had a chance to participate in an honor flight homecoming like the one last night, make it a priority to attend one and bring your kids and grandchildren. I promise you it will be worth your effort.
Lynne DeBruin.
Well, Congress needs to honor the promises they've made to veterans who've served since 9/11, which is why House members need to better explain why they recently voted to cut some benefits in the post-9/11 GI Bill. Were the benefits excessive, or was this a breach of trust?
Collin Roth.
My advice is for former Scott Walker campaign manager Rick Wiley. Enjoy that big paycheck from Donald Trump. You proved you can be bought, and I hope conservatives and candidates won't soon forget it.
They will, though. My unsolicited advice is to the business community. If you've been paying any attention, you know that you've become a political piñata. Candidates routinely demonize both business and American capitalism. My advice is that it is time to realize that you need to start defending yourselves by explaining the benefits of free markets, jobs, investment, and economic growth before it is too late. Next on Sunday Insight, a Milwaukee Democratic State Senator is getting primaried. While the presidential candidates in both parties battle it out, a potentially nasty race is shaping up right here in Milwaukee between two African-American Democrats. State Representative Mandela Barnes said last week that he will challenge Senator Lena Taylor in the August primary. The race may be the latest in a series of primary challenges to Democrats who are seen as insufficiently liberal. So, Michael, what is this one really all about?
Well, if you look real close, all you had to do is see who was behind Mandela Barnes when he made this announcement. Also, you need to know Chris Larson and the crew, members of what I call the White Working Families Party, and their platform has nothing to do with getting employment for black folks, but redirected their poverty pimps. They grew out of acorn. That should tell you everything. This whole race has to do with Chris Larson, who wants to be the conductor of the black freedom train controlling local politics. Lena Taylor had the nerve, the audacity to talk back to the massa, and now all of a sudden he's running one of his boys against her.
This is kind of a continuation of that county exec's race, because she was supporting Chris Abley and he was supporting Chris Larson, right?
So well, she never came out in support of anybody.
No, she
even though
she certainly seemed to. So what is your read on this?
Well, I think it's partially what Michael says, especially about Chris Larson and that progressive far left wing of the Democratic Party. They are clearly going after any Democrat who they view as moderate or centrist or whatever.
Do you know how weird it is for me to hear you describe Lena Taylor as moderate and centrist? But in their eyes, she is.
Well, and I actually, to back up this statement, I actually went and fact-checked all of her votes in the last few years. And guess what? There's 3 or 4 votes that I would look at and say that's a Republican vote. The rest of them are all pure party line Democratic votes. So yes, is she more centrist than the progressive left side of the party? Yes, but that's what it is. It's kind of a fight between the liberal far right left and the more centrist Democrats.
As I kind of said before, this is about, I would say, an evil ego, right? This is Chris Larson who wants control of everything and everybody in the Senate.
Well, but there's also there's an ideological component here. I mean, the centrist, moderate Democrats are being purged. Jeff Plaley, Jason Fields.
They have not always been successful. I'm forgetting the guy's name, but Chris Larson ran a primary opponent in a Senate seat west of Madison last year, and he actually lost. So he has not won every time he's tried to primary somebody out before.
Okay.
Yeah, in many ways, this is something that we're actually fairly used to, these Tea Party establishment type challenges.
Is that the left-wing version of it?
I think so in many ways, but I think there's another component to this that has to do with the succession of who's going to succeed Gwen Moore. I think Lena Taylor is seen as kind of the heir apparent, and I think Chris Larson and the progressives really want to have a hand in who that successor
Michael Holt,
is.
that
that person wants to be Chris Larson, who's really manipulating so much from behind the scenes. You know, they're supposed to have a vote on who's the next president of the Common Council. Is it surprising to you that the 2 new members who Chris Larson helped in her campaigns are not voting for Ashanti Hamilton?
Michael,
I mean, this thing filters all the way down.
You're giving Chris Larson too much power. The bottom line is
Mandela
Barnes is his own man. There's plenty of people
Barnes is not his own man.
He is responsible for himself. He's a grown-up and he's doing what he wants. Bottom line, he will not. If he doesn't win this election, he's out of political office. Barnes must think he has a real shot at this.
Is there one issue?
Because he has his family's party behind him.
Okay, is there an issue? Is there one issue that they're going to be debating? Will it be schools? Will it be concealed carry? What?
Oh, it's going to be really hard to trap Lena. If he talks about school choice, you know, she's not a great supporter of school choice. You know, if they will talk about guns, but if the race is about what she did and what Mandela did, if they both stand on their record, Mandela doesn't have a chance because all he's done is complain. And it's one of the problems of the black community.
Listening to you guys, it was a little bit like Hillary and Bernie. So what is it you don't get? Let's go around the table. Michael Holt, you're first.
Well, what I don't get is why people don't see that the recent election for county executive and the Taylor Barnes race is more about sour grapes and power.
Michelle Litjens.
Charlie, I don't get why so many people complain about government and so few people run for public office. You could start circulating papers Friday, so if you want to make a difference, help a candidate circulate nomination papers or circulate them for yourself.
Lynne DeBruin.
Well, Charlie, what I don't get is Bernie Sanders' repeated criticisms of Israel and U.S. policy toward Israel. His politically far-left criticisms right before the New York primary aren't correct on the issue or politically smart.
Collin Roth.
Well, what I don't get is how the frontrunner of the Republican Party managed to miss out on all those rules regarding delegates. Wasn't he supposed to be like the smartest guy ever?
Well, what I don't get is why do we go to all the trouble of electing a state assembly, a state senator, and a governor when apparently all that really matters is what a Dane County judge says? Next on Sunday Insight, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week, but first, here's your morning news update. It's time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Michael Holt, you're first.
Well, my losers, poor white folks. New research shows they will die 13 years sooner than rich white people. And black folks, I don't even want to get into that. My winner, an appellate court, has opened the door for individuals who can't get IDs to vote. That's a big win for potential voters, but it's probably something Republicans are not too happy about.
Michelle Litjens.
The winners are Wisconsin workers. Wisconsin's unemployment rate has dropped to 4.5%, with the national average being 5%, and Wisconsin is one of only 10 states to have less unemployment today than in 2007. The losers are still the victims of the John Doe investigation, when Judge Lynn Edelman said there may be a way for prosecutors to continue to have access to the personal records that the Wisconsin Supreme Court said must be turned over to them. When will this end?
Lynne DeBruin.
Well, my winners are 4 Wisconsin Democrats, Representatives Berceau and Hesselbein and Senators Hansen and Bewley, who've called for public hearings for University of Wisconsin chancellors to describe how their campuses are absorbing the $250 million budget cuts. The chancellors were supposed to give public presentations to the Board of Regents last Thursday, but the presentations were canceled at last minute, in part to protect Republican legislators from a public backlash while running for re-election, and in part to protect the university from Republican claims of exaggerations. My loser is Republican David Murphy, chair of the Assembly College University Committee, for refusing to hold public hearings on the cuts.
Collin Roth.
My winner this week is also the state of Wisconsin, which got some good economic news this week. Unemployment is down, labor force participation is up, and the state just recorded the best 12-month job gain since August 2004. My loser this week is Venezuela, which projects a 500% inflation increase in 2016. Socialism isn't really working out down there. Perhaps some in this country should take note.
Well, my winner, Scott Neitzel, and the other negotiators of the Bucks' 30-year lease, a much better deal than anybody expected and a win-win for taxpayers. Loser, Donald Trump. Now, he'll probably win big in New York on Tuesday, but he's not going to be able to insult, whine, and bully himself into the White House. Thanks for joining us, and have a great week.